with Mr. Dan Winter, Theraphi.net, fractalfield.com. Dan, we've got, like I said, we've got Dylan with us, and we've got Riley back again.
All right.
And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. How you doing?
Sure. Well, it's great. And I love the enthusiasm. You guys are so dedicated. You were just down in Florida doing some work with Theraphi, right?
We were. So Theraphi is, I'm like kind of a junkie, not at the level you are, because from a physics standpoint, you understand this at a much deeper level. But for me, Theraphi is the real sort of med bed type technology that's available to the general public. And after kind of working with you for, I guess now about 2 years and really trying to understand the science of it, it is one of the most exciting technologies that I feel is available to the general public. And one of the goals that me and Riley and Dylan have is to start doing some promotional work and helping to get the word out for people around the United States that are looking to get access to this technology. And we were very blessed and very lucky to meet Lachelle down in Cape Coral, Florida, with Ultra Energy Wellness Center. And that is an amazing wellness center. Anybody in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Sarasota, anywhere in Florida, will have the information for her. But that was me and Riley's first opportunity to really experience the Theraphi technology, and it was amazing. Riley, you go ahead and tell us about how you enjoyed that, because I know we sat and talked for like 2 days about it.
Yeah, we really did. The excitement never went away, and it still hasn't gone away. I mean, pretty much the whole thing was an experience from the moment you walked in the door. You hear the music and the fountains, and then she's so kind, and it was just everything had just such a nice organic flow to it. And then I was just really blown away by the technology, and it's such a spiritual place. It was just so refreshing.
That's great. You know, the Theraphi generates that field, but a lot does depend, of course, on the ambience. So you, of course, have the organic environment and the fresh air and natural material. But actually, it's in physics is called conditioning the space, that after a while, if the space is relaxed and blessed, like there's no anger in the air, then that plasma field hangs around more and more. It actually saturates the space. And so if it's a good healing center, it becomes, they say the plasma field, the plasma cloud is like your pet puppy or your pet kitten. It goes and runs its motor if it likes you, because you relax, and it's actually kind of self-aware in its own right. Incidentally, I think we just mentioned that the big GSIC Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference in Orlando was the last few days, and Hannah Spence from Florida took the Theraphi there, and the reports also were off the charts. Enthusiasm, all the slots were sold out, and everybody had a meditative bliss experience. It was quite fabulous. So the news is all wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad you. And so now you're ready for the next steps.
Oh man.
The next steps. So now, Dan, one of the things Riley's doing is she's turned into an interior decorator for wellness centers. So she's taken a lot of what Lachelle was doing. And, the thing about it, for people out there that have the technology, that are looking to get the technology, getting the technology is certainly the first step. But doing exactly what you said as far as conditioning the space, like, because we understand what we're doing there, we understand the nature of the energy. um, all ambient light, like rock salt lighting, really beautiful soft music in the background. There's none of these overhead fluorescent lights in a very stale environment. You're really getting into a deep sense of relaxation. The minute she shuts the door, you're in your own space, and she has done a phenomenal job. And so, in addition to she's got two Theraphi beds there, but in addition to that, she's charging copper bracelets, which we both bought our bracelets, and then she has water that sits in Himalayan salt. So after you get done using the Theraphi, you're drinking, basically some salt water to restore nutrients and minerals back into the body. The whole place is loaded with fountains, with organic music, and she's probably got at least, I would say, 75 to 100 other products. I got B12 spray, I mean, Riley's probably got 5 or 6 other things. So she's got a lot of other things there. And she is a phenomenal woman. That center, for anybody that's out there that's opening a wellness center, anybody that's out there that's interested in getting into the Theraphi technology, this is a place that you definitely want to emulate, because as you were saying earlier, Dan, she's had this technology now for about 4+ years.
Mm.
So she
Yeah.
really understands it.
That's great. And it'd be good to just review, a short list of the synergy technologies that are well known to have excellent synergy with Theraphi. Remember, the essential principle is anything that's centripetal and helps you gain inertia toward being centripetal and charge implosive increases the negentropy, the self-organization. And that would include then, for example, negative ion wind, actually breathing nanobubbled hydrogen, both breathing and drinking is well known to be synergetic with. Also, of course, as you say, charged water, water that's been charged with Theraphi and trace minerals. And they're actually, infrared saunas that are done correctly with the right frequencies of infrared are also implosive. So there's quite a long list of things you can do to synergize with the key concept, which is anything that's centripetal. It increases your own inner ability to implode. And that, of course, then would include binaural beats and brainwave biofeedback. All these things fit together, even a breath biofeedback training, I Thrive HRV breath. For example, that famous 10-second 0.1 hertz HRV LF component breath, 5 seconds in, that is very synergetic, especially to kind of get started. So that, because the breath coherence, and that's actually one of the direct frequencies, which is imploding in Theraphi, and which is the most important frequency in the blood, is called the Mayer wave. So there's so many things you can do to increase the centripetal force, and that's the fun stuff.
It is. And you talked about how using the technology, many times it's been reported that there is sort of a blissful experience. I will tell you that for me and Riley, we used it, and we had to fly out of Orlando, and we had, what about, I mean, the traffic wasn't great that day, but we probably
Oh
had
my
about a
goodness.
5-hour drive from Cape Coral back up to Orlando, and all we could talk about was how amazing our experience was using the Theraphi, and we were both on cloud nine. So
We missed our
it's
flight
so
for it
exciting.
and everything.
Say that
What's
again.
that?
Say again.
I said we missed our flight for it and everything.
They say that as many as 30% of people will have some sharpening of vision and even some euphoria or bliss experience, particularly in the full body mode. A little more true for women in that case than men, but there are many variables. If you have a good synergetic space, your frame of mind that day, and also these things, as we know, are more powerful if you have a magnetic line that's close, and also sunrise and sunset, for example, all things that increase the centripetal moment.
Mm. And Dan, the last time we spoke, you also said it's really important to try to get fresh air into the atmosphere so the air has charge. You
Yeah.
actually made a really good point, because you said that when people are sitting around in an air-conditioned building and they're all yawning, they're yawning because it's basically stale air that's getting crushed with the metal fans that are.
Yeah, the physics is that the aluminum fins in most air conditioners deplete what's called, you could call, the capacitance of the air, which is directly pretty much eliminating most oxygen solubility directly. So people are yawning in the air-conditioned air because the oxygen is literally no longer soluble in the blood. And that's an example then that the charge in the air. And Theraphi, as we know, particularly the bifilar implosive conjugate Tesla coil, that is a zero-point energy implosive device. And zero-point energy implosive devices don't do well in environments where there's no charge to implode. The same way people
Exactly.
charge to implode. So all of those things, affect. So of course we've got fresh living air. It's also true that you don't want to breeze while it's on, because too much air movement will actually blow away the plasma cloud. But you fresh air before and after that kind of, yes.
Mm-hmm. And so, we have plasma fire here. So actually, since that last call, Riley will tell you that during the day, and usually in the morning, I open up the doors and I've got fans and I'm running fresh air
Yeah.
all through the whole building. And I do that now on a regular basis, not only just for enhancing the plasma fields, but also just in the nature of knowing that we need some fresh air, and this, environmentally cut off, stuff is just not good for us.
Yeah, they say that when they teach people to learn to live without food, it's actually quite a well-known phenomena. They have to do it in nature. If you try to do it in a motel room that's air conditioned, you can't actually absorb enough charge from your environment, the chi, the baraka. So that's what the living nature of living architecture, living air, it literally allows you to implode. And if you have access to bliss, well, as they say, when Francis of Assisi went down to sit in the woods with Claire, they called the fire department because their aura got so big.
That is beautiful. That's actually a really good segue, because Dan, I wanted to talk about also today, charging and growing the aura. I know we talked about that, and the one key thing that you talked about is that it's every conscious decision that you make, what you're eating, how you're breathing, where you're spending your time. I mean, growing your charge and growing your aura is really, like, for us as humans, we have so much potential. And I think that understanding the physics of Theraphi, understanding the physics of our bodies, also gets into different things that we can do to tap into higher potential, maybe even say higher frequency. But the whole thing with Princia, and talking about how we are able now to start hopefully advancing spiritually as humans, and tapping into the stars, and being able to sort of interact with the stars, and that whole sort of conversation. I think that, like with anything, sometimes we need to hear these things, a few different times to absorb slowly. But I really feel like it's so important that we get into these types of subjects where we really understand who we are as spiritual beings, and some of the potential that we have. Do you want to get into that? And we could maybe delve into that now that we're getting into the auras of Francis of Assisi and kind of how that was working.
Yeah, well, I mean, the core principle is that the only thing about you that actually has the potential to be immortal is your aura. It's very measurable, GDV, biowell, and holes in the aura are a way to measure astral hygiene, for example, like teaching your teenagers not to use recreational drugs. You can measure the holes in the aura. Well, the holes in the aura appear because the perception of bliss is not symmetric during drug-induced experience. And it's the symmetry that eventually allows the rose to be perfectly implosive. And it's the compression first that enables the rose to be radiant later. So the principle is that the charge in your aura is designed to create implosion. And that centripetal force defines life and consciousness. So the frequencies of your brainwave, flameinmind.com, golden ratio, frequencies of your heart, the frequencies of your DNA, all of those things are based on golden ratio, plankfire.com, because the only real source of life is that implosion. Why Theraphi so famously helps seed germination, because seeds germinate because they really suck. I mean, because they implode charge. And so that's the core principle. Then we have evolved that. And as you were saying, then we say, so ultimately, once you understand the critical electrical nature of the aura, which really is pretty much the definition of all things spiritual, and that is very measurable, then you begin to make kind of all your decisions in your life based on, is my aura going to be bigger or smaller after this, including who you kiss and which broccoli you eat, and a few other things. So the core idea was that then you can extrapolate upon that conversation. We call it the hygiene for bliss, or astral hygiene. And my second book, goldenmean.info/conscious kids, implosion, secret science of ecstasy and immortality, is an introduction to the hygiene for bliss and, spiritual hygiene for kids. But so then we extrapolate on that idea, what you also suggested and for this conversation, which was the physics of soul. So then, again, reviewing, as you suggested, review might be appropriate. So after we found that Theraphi was frequently or replicably, or in many cases, helping to trigger lucid dreaming. There's a wonderful article about that in the Theraphi blog. And then later we found in the university studies on which frequencies trigger lucid dreaming, the two major frequencies are practically bang on my equation, which feeds Theraphi, meaning that that cascade of frequencies, and I believe the correct technical term is phase conjugate pump wave, which is Planck times powers of golden ratio, that implosion, planckfire.com, that feeds Theraphi, it can actually be demonstrated to be a lucid dreaming trigger. And also some say Theraphi is helpful to release ghosts. We think there's a connection there. So the reason that Theraphi can help, and there's lots of other ways to help trigger lucid dreaming, including looking at your hand inside the dream, because it adds to the centripetal compression. And the compression then makes your aura more centripetal. And that's how you wake up inside the dream. So, but the fact that the physics of lucid dreaming, which now we understand is the longitudinal coherence of Theraphi that's related to the onset of that increased ability to lucid dream, just like oh yeah, there's your Lukovsky golden ratio based. But just like the physics of the golden ratio brainwave cascades, which later we showed the Monroe Institute, help trigger remote viewing and astral travel. So the physics behind that is that as your aura becomes implosive and centripetal, the primarily transverse component of the electromagnetic fields of your aura eventually go through the pine cone squirt gun and come out the nozzle of the squirt gun called Planck, and they emerge as a more coherent longitudinal EMF, coherent longitudinal EMF interferometry, it's called, which was called the Ba from the Ka, the Kesjan body, rainbow light body. And we believe that is literally the physics of soul, that then you're propagating coherently into the longitudinal array, which gives a beautiful physics behind what's been described for centuries as the communion of saints and the ancestral memory and the Aboriginal song lines. All these things fit together when you realize those compression nodes of the longitudinal array are literally what you inhabit when your aura becomes centripetal and implosive enough. And so then when you get to the nodes of that array, and you should get very good at finding the magnetic line cross points, because it dramatically helps telepathy, lucid dreaming, Theraphi, labyrinths, stone circles, and cathedrals. They all benefit if you got a magnetic line cross for that reason, where telepathy has been measured and where reduced nuclear critical mass has been measured. So that array is what you inhabit when you get coherent in that way, and how Aboriginals were steering the song lines for hundreds of miles in all directions with their lucid dreaming. So that kind of coherence, we are convinced, is directly related to literally a new measurable electrical science of soul. And very important, because after that's measurable and teachable to governments and universities, then governments could stop making soulless decisions.
Oh man, I love it. That's beautiful. And the whole thing of it is really the understanding of what it is, how we work with that and what's good for that, and building upon it, and what's not so good, and
Exactly.
trying to make those conscious decisions. And I think, Dan, so much beauty of what it is that you do is really helping to educate the planet, because the knowledge that this is the kind of knowledge we really need in the universities, and it's not necessarily a lot of the knowledge right now that's prevalent, but to be able to filter it out at all different levels and really start helping educate people, to really give them a sense of direction on where we're all trying to go with our lives, and really ultimately raising the consciousness of the planet, through having this type of knowledge, is just, it's
essential.
priceless.
Yes, and so let's give some practical examples. So when it was proven many decades ago, I was there with Health and Light by John Ott, that if you remove the wrong frequencies in the fluorescent light in your child's classroom and you install sunlight, you measure a dramatic increase in attention span. Now, the physics of attention is exactly the implosion we were speaking about. In fact, when children see without their eyes, they see a vortex form inside their head, they're blindfolded, and the Theraphi flame and mind frequencies are what drive that. And the vortex plasma vortex inside your head is that physics of consciousness. That's what attention is. Now, if we extrapolate that principle once we understand why sunlight creates attention and synthetic frequencies do not, we realize the driving force behind that is the implosive cascade called phase conjugate pump wave. For example, the Schumann harmonics are almost precisely Planck times powers of golden ratio, and that is not a coincidence. That's the reason Gaia is negentropic. And so that cascade, relaxing in the Schumann cascade, for example, is literally the physics of Theraphi and bliss, and it's the brainwave physics of flameandmind.com, et cetera, et cetera. So in that classroom now, today, we have many problems because we're generating all kinds of horrible, horrible, horrible frequencies, which are destroying not just attention span, but all possibilities of bliss, starting with the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and the electrosmog density in today's classroom. Plus, you got dead air and you got an aluminum cage, all of which are fatal to your aura. And you expect those kids have an aura to grow and have a soul? Sorry, kids. We are destroying the souls of our children until we teach the physics. So you take those kids, I dare you, any parent who's having, behavioral problems or autism, take any of those kids to a cabin in the woods for about 4 days and feed them only live food and nothing electrical. And I just dare you to see what happens to those kids after 4 or 5 days out of that electrical shit. I'm telling you, it's critical. Starting with getting the Bluetooth headphones out of your head and getting the Wi-Fi off. I mean, our houses are so full of electrosmog, and it's measurable the way that is destroying the aura. This is not news. This is old information. And whether you say, well, is this an evil Draco plot? You could do the conspiracy theory, say, oh, well, they're trying to destroy our soul. But I'm sorry, I think it's more just dumb stupidity.
Yeah, no, that's but it's really important because, Dan, so much has changed in my generation and probably in yours too, that we're seeing things now on a massive scale that we never really saw before when I was a kid. Like ADHD is almost like
Exactly.
it's just so common, you don't think anything of it. But when I was growing up, I never heard of it. I mean,
Yeah,
very
either.
rarely
Exactly.
did I ever hear
Yeah.
about it.
But
And
attention, after we can teach what attention is, we might be able to deal with attention deficit. And attention is the ability to implode a vortex to a foci. That's literally the physics of attention. So, of course, now attention deficit, in my view, there is a relationship to vaccinations. That would be my humble opinion. But it's well documented that food additives dramatically are related to autism and attention deficit. This is well documented in the literature. This is not subjective. So, but all those things that relate to the ability of the aura to implode, what we're saying in Solman, is directly related to the physics of attention. Classic example is our work with Deborah Lawrence, Deborah Sundbeck, who wrote the book Infinity Walk, where they documented that if you do the cross crawl, alternate knees, and you walk in the figure 8 to your favorite music, and your head is perpendicular, at the end of those cross crawls, the figure 8 motion ignites so much cross hemispheric blood flow that you can feel your corpus callosum get hot. And by the way, a large percent of kids with dyslexia lose their dyslexia if they do that regularly. And we understand the physics because that figure 8 is literally causing implosion inside your head, the physics of attention. So these are examples, the brain gym, Infinity Walk. So now that we know what attention is, we can deal with things like attention deficit.
So Dan, that walk is like what type of walk is it that they're doing in the figure 8?
Well, it's called the cross crawl. You know how a kid that doesn't get to crawl is more likely to get dyslexia. The reason is because you're doing this thing with your opposite knee. So your left hand, right knee, right hand, left knee. So as you're walking, you're touching your hands to your opposite knees. It's called a cross crawl walk. And now if you're doing that in a figure 8 to your favorite music, and there's a few other parts of this where your head goes perpendicular to the 8, and at the cross point of the 8, you're literally turning inside out. And so the first time you try it, you get dizzy. But it forces so much cross-hemispheric blood flow that it pressurizes the vortex of the figure eight at the center of the brain. It's called Infinity Walk. Deborah Blair, I know who wrote the book, and it's famous and it's well known. But understand the physics of why that increases attention. It's actually proven, many of the most famous artists in history were dyslexic. It's been proven that dyslexia is increased nervous wiring between the hemispheres. So it isn't that hemispheres are not connected. No, it's that the connection between the hemispheres doesn't come to a vortex point of compression. So sorting is not enabled. However, if you do the figure eight walk, it's like
Beautiful.
It's like after a good fight in an Irish pub. They say sorted. It was the compression that did it.
Oh my God. Being that I live with an Irishman, I can totally relate to that. So
but
Dan,
what does
many
the sorting
times,
is that all compressions, when they converge at what's called a conjugate point, the only charge that can pass through the compression point, if it's centripetal and conjugate and implosive, the only charge that can pass through the point, and it has to be a point of compression related to Planck, only the charge waves that are in phase can pass through that center. That is the core physics of negentropy and life itself, also the cause of gravity.
beautiful. Dan, many times talking about intention and focusing intention, you've often brought up the example that if you can focus enough energy and start focusing enough energy to make your pinky tingle, that is your entry level point of starting to work on focusing and working with intention. Do you want to just get into that a little bit more, and kind of that's where it starts, and the whole process of learning how to focus intention and kind of grow that ability?
It's a fun example. It doesn't really have to be your baby finger. It could well be the tip of your
But
nose.
I like it though. I like that example.
Actually, the tip of the nose might work good for witches, but no. And by the way, that's a cartilage that actually is microwave active, and that spark gap of the tip of the nose is the physics of Eskimo kissing. And there's lots of. But no, back to the question. In the Gurdjieff school, that's where we learned that lesson, which was that you're about to learn sacred gymnastic, the Gurdjieff sacred dance, the Gurdjieff gymnastic, which is much related to the tensegrity from Castaneda. And you are told that before you can gain inertia from the sacred dance, forming twos, first obligatory, it's in the movie Meetings with Remarkable Men. There's a great film series at the end of the Bliss Dance, which was a turning point in my life at claymont.org. But anyway, so you are told, first, before you may begin, you must learn to put feeling into your baby finger. Now, you could meditate for a year and try to figure out what they meant by feeling, but eventually I understood what they meant. You're putting attention somewhere in your body with such density that if you were then to feel your baby finger begin to tingle and get warmer, and the aura around your baby finger begins to grow, you would then recognize that there was an electrical power to your attention, that choosing to place it in one place and the skill to be able to hold it in one place could then grow that electric field. That is an inner muscle. And that inner muscle to create that centripetal force is the muscle that has to grow if you're eventually going to bend stars, basically. So what Gurdjieff is telling us is learn to steer the geometry of your attention and develop the inner muscle to move it at will, literally at will. And that will then enable you to choose to steer the tornado.
That's beautiful. So that, it's a process, right? So that's where you start, but the goal is to just keep growing and expanding and getting better at it so that you can, manifest larger fields and more energy from that. Is that correct? I mean, that's the whole thing. It's much like hitting the gym and building the muscle for
That's
your
right,
body.
the inner muscle. Yeah, Randy Kramer calls it the psionics muscle, but there's lots of names for it. But that muscle is actually frequency related. So the set of harmonics that causes your brain waves to implode come to a point. It's a golden ratio and octave cascade from alpha to gamma. It's well known. Triggers lucid dreaming, triggers remote viewing. It triggers, in Jean-Charles Moyen's case, ability to teleport. So what's happening is that you're imploding into the array, and that inner muscle begins as a child learns first to make that alpha around 8 hertz, and then that alpha enters a caduceus cascade, which is literally an implosive vortex. It's literally a caduceus, and it's based on Hermes, and that is the inner muscle to squeeze the tornado. And as Bill Tiller so well measured, that focus to human attention causes electric fields to compress in his book, Conscious Acts of Creation. I'm the first to explain the physics of why focused attention causes electrical compression, but it's been well measured. And so the intensity of that compression that your consciousness creates is literally a physically measurable measurement of the power of your attention. And I do mean power, as in when you have a mild mind meld with an Orion Queen Mog, you feel a vice right here. Well, you're feeling this centripetal force. And as you grow that force, then the next step is the ability that field effect, which is longitudinal coherent, enables you to take that plasma donut with you coherently for lucid dreaming, remote viewing, successful death, etc. Physics of
So
soul.
Dan, when you're right, so when you're doing that and you're focusing that, is that like mind? Is there anything coming from the third eye? Like, where is that just 100% based on focus and just, kind of concentrating that energy and visualizing exactly what it is that you're doing? Like, what is it like? And I believe you've explained that it's almost like you're creating a plasma energy tornado.
Yes.
Almost when you're focusing on that specific type of thing. So literally by enhancing the focus and by repeatedly doing that tornado is literally growing as you repeatedly keep doing that and having that focus. Is that right?
Yes, and of course we could go into a lot more of biomechanical detail on the measurable biomechanical correlates of that intensity of focus, which would be summarized as the biomechanics of Kundalini, which I have been teaching for 30 years, the professional documentary at goldenmean.info/Kundalini. Short summary, the sacrocranial harmonics called the tidals, which are exactly the low frequencies driving Theraphi, and then the brainwave harmonics, which is a continuation of exactly that cascade. That then drives that pump wave from the amygdala. It's literally a phase conjugate pump wave, low frequency implosion, entrained by the breath. And then you can actually measure the motorization of the rotation of the liquid ventricle horns, as we did when we measured the ringing in the ears, heard by meditators during bliss. We measured that. We calculated the frequencies, showed by equation where that fit, and demonstrated, this is called the still point draining of the ventricle liquids. It's also called getting horny in the sex literature, which is because the ventricle horns are literally motorized by the rising of the conserved sexual juices, and the ventricle horns get horny in the sense that the phonon cascade moves the ventricle horn liquids more toward a crystal, which is then focusing that implosively on the pineal. And in my case, during intense Kundalini, that will get burning hot and you'll have a shooting arrow of negative ion wind. So the whole very dramatic biophysics of Kundalini is a direct outgrowth of this. And by the way, we even learned how to measure this in the microwave based on the 1.91 angstrom ADP microwave, which is actually phase conjugate to Planck, and how you can measure the density of biological metabolism and measure bliss. So this whole phenomena, the biological linkages, are teachable. And it boils down to one very simple thing. If you ain't imploding, you're not getting immortal.
Yeah, that's always just such, I love going back in and just kind of reviewing and touching on these things again, and even sometimes going in just a little deeper, maybe just one or two layers or questions down into that. So
Well, I
the
would like to say
beauty
that it's also well known that ADP, ATP frequency spark gap is profoundly, measurably symbiotic to the Earth grid. So literally the measurable microwave frequencies of human bliss are profoundly conducted measurably by the Earth grid. We use the microwave tuning horn, Bob Dratch. And this was, now you understand exactly why the magnetic line crosspoints are the place where you get military quality telepathy, because that DNA radio is a big conjugator, man. And anyway, this is a big and fun subject.
That's beautiful. So, Dan, to kind of circle back and then push forward, one of the things that's so incredibly amazing about Theraphi is that, you've basically rediscovered technology that was being used by our friends, the Anunnaki, right? That's inscribed in hieroglyphics in Egypt. And as much as I, try to get as much of the story, I know that theoretically, it was actually the Anunnaki who came and put a lot of these structures together with the pyramids. You did a phenomenal video with Sam from the Bosnian Pyramid, and he just was on Michael Sala's channel within the last week, and I listened to that. I listened to that at least 10 times, and we talk about all the benefits of the pyramids, all the things that they were doing, including seed germination, the healing that's going on under the Bosnian pyramid, all the stabilizing Earth's atmosphere, first free energy system. But, with all that technology is Theraphi. It's literally inscribed in the hieroglyphics with the dual tube systems. And, I kind of like to touch base because, when I like to just say Princia, when all this was going on, they were thinking, gosh, these humans really have some great potential. I mean, we've really, got something special here with these humans. And, when we start getting into measuring our aura, focusing energy, it literally gives us a connection to the stars. And there is some really esoteric, beautiful science there from a physics standpoint that I know you understand very well. And I think it's really important for us to look up and say, wow, we are really star creatures in a sense, and we have so much amazing potential. Do you want to get in and talk a little bit about kind of the physics of that, and what the abilities are that we have that we are just starting to learn about and starting to learn how to tap into?
Sure, that's a fun story. You're asking all the fun questions. It's great. So where that started in the conversation with Sam and the Bosnian pyramids, I think we were the first to measure in detail. It's called a spectrum analysis of the weak capacitive coupling there. Because Sam had, 250,000 people a year come there, and many of them were getting rejuvenation and seed germination and all the magic stuff. And so we did the power spectrum. So what we got was, of course, the Schumann cascade around 8 hertz. But then instead of the 50 hertz, we got 53 hertz. And the Schumann, as you know, is 7.83, not 7.29. So 7.83, 50. And then the whole cascade continued by golden ratio. And then when he went to the roof on top, he got, I think it's 28 kilohertz. And the equation said it should have been 26 something. And it turned out that the difference between 7.29 hertz, the actual golden ratio times Planck, versus 7.83, which is the actual Schumann, that difference as ratio then predicts why we didn't get 50, but we got exactly 53, and why we didn't get 26, we got 28 kilohertz on the roof. Because the cascade that is perfected golden ratio times Planck is modulated slightly on Earth based on the difference between 7.29 theoretical accurate golden ratio on Planck versus the actual Schumann 7.83. So when you retune the implosive cascade, and we just added this super powerful new implosive cascade in the latest upgrade to flameinmind.com and the Flame of Sound, it's called the Schumann cascade perfected. And this makes the most incredibly perfect driver to implosive negentropy. Anyway, so now we know exactly how and why Sam's pyramid is creating the famous rejuvenation that people come by the millions think have the experience. Well, it's related to Theraphi, absolutely, but it's also, and then this gets into, as you introduce greatly, the Egyptian connection. The Egyptian connection apparently is related. We said, they had those famous glass light bulbs in the Egyptian carvings with the squirrel in the middle, the spiral, which is the logo for Theraphi. and they call it the Egyptian light bulb. But we now know that it's much more than that. Actually, it's the fact that the Anunnaki were complaining about aging prematurely. It's the dominant theme of half the Anunnaki writings is about this damn planet over here. Every time we come here, we age prematurely. We got to fix that. And so they fixed it by doing what they called raising a Shem unto the Lord, which was mistranslated, as Sitchin figured out, to be raising an altar in the church. They weren't building an altar. They were building an implosive capacitor for time reversal. That's what a Shem unto the Lord is. And that's what that blooming light bulb is about, making a Shem unto the Lord, which is otherwise known as a med bed. I mean, time reversal. I mean, rejuvenation. I mean, age reversal. Remember, when they measured time reversal in phase conjugate optics, they didn't actually measure time going backwards. No, they measured field effects returning to a previous state of increased order. That's all they measured. So in physics, the only thing they mean by time reversal is negentropy, nothing else. And the reason that's core to the literature of MedBed is because that time reversal is directly or indirectly the physics of the cellular dedifferentiation, which is at the core of not just the stem cell literature, but it's at the core of the idea that to return something to a state of previously increased order, use the suction force of that implosive phase conjugation, whether it's in phase conjugate optics where time reversal has been measured, or in Theraphi or in MedBed. So this whole idea, the Shem unto the Lord, is actually the Anunnaki saying, oh shit, I don't know if you remember Harkonnen in Dune, he could only stay alive if he had his artificial life support field, which, by the way, that was Enki's father-in-law, which kind of gives you the idea about Enlil. Hint, hint. So the whole issue of time reversal and age reversal was like central. And then you combine that, the same phase conjugate pump wave, which is Schumann, is the reason they call the pyramid the Hummer, because that drove out the coherent longitudinal at the base, which is the only physics possible of global wireless power at those nodes. So it's a fun story.
It's a beautiful story. And as you've talked about many times, those were some of the little tunings that needed to be done by some of the great pioneers earlier that were trying to do
Hermes.
that. Exactly, Hermes, and then Mr. Tesla, just didn't figure out that they need to be on those magnetic lines when they were doing a lot of the free energy stuff, and there was just 60 hertz instead of 50, and maybe just
Yeah, we're not picking on Tesla here. His contributions are huge. But what we are saying is we believe he did get longitudinal interferometry pretty well figured out, his beam weapons, for example. But unfortunately, he didn't understand the optimal way to make phase conjugation is the phase conjugate pump waves has to be perfectly tuned to Planck, PlanckFire.com. Because he didn't understand that equation, Planck didn't exist then he didn't know that 60 hertz was a huge mistake. You will never, ever, ever make carbon nano in a 60 hertz factory. Ain't possible. Got to be done in a 50 hertz factory because that's golden ratio to Planck. And charge collapse is the reason carbon nano fullerenes are even interesting. So this gives you an idea. Right. So when Tesla didn't understand the frequency signature, he also didn't understand the geometry of the coherent longitudinal nodes. So out on his lawn, he's placed these light bulbs. He wants to light them at a distance. He didn't realize that if he had used the longitudinal nodes correctly, which the pyramid builders understood perfectly. And they got the frequency signature right also. So in that sense, Hermes was a little bit ahead of Tesla.
That's amazing. And it's such a great story, but it really goes back to also talking about how amazing our original history here is with the Anunnaki, because they had it all down. I mean, every single one of those pyramids was in multiple ley lines, and sometimes it was under lava fields, and I mean, like every single one of those. And there's so much technology that they were using and doing that we still to this day cannot replicate. Moving 100-ton stones and the precise carvings, and not like putting together pieces to make one big piece, but literally carving out 100-ton stones. I mean, we're just in such an exciting time right now because we're sort of rediscovering some of our past. We're rediscovering our roots. We're getting access to some of this knowledge, and we're getting access to Therapy and all these other amazing technologies. But
Well,
Dan, I can't say it enough. I'm always so grateful for everything you do. I'm so incredibly grateful because I know for so many people that know you and listen to you, you've connected so many dots, but it's beyond what I can put into words. It really is. Um and I'm like a big kid. I mean, the more I learn from you, the more I want to know, and the more exciting it all gets.
well,
So
yeah, and let's thank you so much, but let's also clarify a little bit about the Anunnaki history. So the actual federation, whom Elena Danaan calls the Seeders, had been involved in seeding civilizations here long before even the arrival of the Anunnaki, we believe. And those Seeder races, multiple, were involved in pyramid installation because many cultures knew that's the only way you get global wireless power. And also, that was the way you use the implosive plasma cascade as a squirt gun for souls at death, and how stargates and portals work. Even today, when they build stargates and portals, they use the natural implosive points of planet grids because that's where the implosion enables the longitudinal interferometry to become coherent, which is the intro to the physics of stargates and portals and teleportation. So this was not just an Anunnaki contribution, but it is true that at the time, Enki, with his science officer Hermes Ningishita Thoth, also called Viracocha Quetzalcoatl, many names, that this was the epitome of their work on life force, which they brought here beautifully and heroically. Unfortunately, they lost at Atlantis when Enlil sunk the place, and it's only recently that Enlil's minions got kicked out of here, and the Nebu is out of the solar system primarily, and the humans have a chance. But like with all planets like ours, where they respect the indigenous peoples, that we have to dig ourselves out of our own hair, out of our own hole. So yes, the parasitic ETs, the Nebus, Greys, and Dracos are largely gone. And you need to know that Enlil Yahweh's mother was half Draco, and that is bad news. how the whole parasitic got sucked in here by invitation by Enlil Yahweh, who ran the joint for centuries after kicking Enki out of Atlantis. And so we have many centuries of parasitism as a race to recover from, but that's not unusual, actually. And it gives us a strength. And the other thing that those friends, the Seeders and Ea, emphasize is the genetic diversity, which is a treasure behind our genetics. He calls it Adam Kadmon, is the recursive braid density coherence, what genetic engineers incorrectly call junk DNA, is a series of spacers that allow the recursive braiding in response to human bliss to implode to the point of making a soul. That is Adam Kadmon. That's when your kids grow up and they see and feel and touch. They actually go through the sun. An advanced shaman all know what it's like to go through the heart of the sun. It's a wonderful eyeball experience, but it takes an advanced shaman to do it, or you come back dizzy. But yes, once your aura is coherent enough, that's why Enki says you will be the twinkling of a million stars. Well, that is physics. There we
Sorry about that. I lost you there for just a minute.
We had so much bliss there.
We had so much bliss, it shut down the whole thing. I love it. I love it. But I like the fact that you're talking about the Seeders and just getting getting the story straight, because it is a lengthy history. And I think Dan, with everything that's going on right now, everybody's and including myself, it's like, what's the way out of this? We're kind of in a big soup, I guess, if you will, of all different kinds of energies, and a lot of lower energy right now on the planet. But ultimately, there's a lot of ways that we're going to get to the end goal, which is kind of a blissful, wonderful planet. But I always think of it as frequency, energy, and bliss, and trying to figure out ways that we can raise our consciousness and raise the level of bliss, and sort of be able to isolate or block out a lot of the negative things that are kind of put upon us that really can manipulate and control our frequency and our energy. But for you personally, what is the way that we kind of raise our consciousness and get to a more blissful state? And if we can do that, does that ultimately sort of pull us out of this kind of soup that we're in right now, where we're kind of we've been in for a very long time, sort of a lower frequency mass, I guess.
Yeah, we kind of put ourselves in electrosmog hell, and then we inhabited aluminum and steel cages, all of which are a cage for the soul. Is ain't good news. But the short summary, aside from live food, two things I would mention. One is access to nature. That the more time you get to spend in nature, the more your aura will have a chance to charge, really. So you prioritize access to nature. And the other thing is, it has to do with what I think Gurdjieff would have called thinking a shareable thought, or what I call that. As you see all of the pain and messiness of every day, you realize that at the end of the day, and I mean literally at the end of your day, if you were to attempt to distill everything you witnessed that day into a compression of what is the pure principle of what has been learned, then you would have made a substance which feeds the collective immortal soul. And that substance is pure principle. And as you begin to inhabit pure principle, that, in other words, for example, somebody you thought you were angry at, and then you say, oh, well, they did this because this happened to them and they had this pain. So now I understand the understanding of the understanding of the understanding of. So I'm no longer angry at this person. I feel deeply inside me where that pain came from. And now that becomes a pure principle. So every time there's a pure principle life lesson that can serve survival for 1 billion years, that is tucked away in this field effect called the collective unconscious, which we now know is a longitudinal array. And it gets tucked away because it did compression well, implosion, which is precisely the only way to die well. So every time at the end of the day, you're sitting there, can you play your day back inverse and watch the whole day like a movie and not get sidetracked, and play the movie passively and watch it and enjoy the whole thing and don't go on any sidetracks? Suddenly you realize you have distilled, compressed, digested your day, and everything is now in the realm of pure principle and infinitely shareable, and will compress perfectly at the time of death.
Mhm. And I know from watching so many videos that you do not want to be carrying anger. That is not, that is a leaded weight in your backpack, right? In your body. You don't want that. And then obviously, if you don't want anger, then you certainly don't want fear, stress, anxiety, a lot of these other emotions, because really that energy and that frequency is really not benefiting you in any way, shape, or form. I think that, with this type of knowledge, Dan, it's a lot of it is about, like, I know for me personally, saying, whoa, I just picked up a cloud of this and I'm inhabiting it, and it needs to be put on the shelf, and I need to get rid of that. And I need to go back to, like you said, I can analyze the information and I can take it in a way where I'm digesting it and I'm coming up with a level of understanding. But I do not, I want to address it immediately, understand, okay, I'm whatever it is, I'm upset, I'm angry, whatever it is, but diagnosing it, understanding it, and then disengaging from it, and finding these methods of being able to say, okay, I'm going to process through this, and I'm going to release this, and I'm going to have understanding, and I'm going to have compassion. And it's a process, right? And so
Yeah.
as I get better at it, and I understand, okay, I need to be like blissful and happy. And certainly in the world, it's not always going to be that way. But when those moments do hit, you're addressing them, you're understanding that, and you're moving through it so that you can stay and maintain those higher frequencies and those higher states of bliss, and be able to process through all those things that we all, as humans, kind of get hit with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's with the Andromedans, mystics famously said, the only pain you feel is the love you withhold. in the sense that if the tornado is coming, you have to, the first step to steering that tornado is to feel the pain of the tornado. If it passed over a metal trailer park, it is feeling pain because there's no implosion. So because it's bleeding charge, which is the definition of pain. So to feel the pain of any tornado, you can't withhold your love. Even viruses need love. So what this means is that the more you can embed in the charge domains of your environment, eventually the larger the tornado that you will be steering.
That's beautiful. And so, Dan, to kind of finish up this call today, you've touched upon the ability of us to sort of is it create stars or interact with stars like on a level where we have the ability to sort of manifest things, even like you were talking about earlier with the shamans being able to connect with the sun and go to the sun and come back and do different things. What ultimately interacting with the stars, and even is it creating stars, or what stuff that we really have in us that we can tap into that really is just mind blowing. I mean, there's a lot of things, but when it gets into the stars and interacting with the cosmos and different things, what is that we have in us that allows us to do that?
Well, wonderful question. I like to start with the simplest example. I talk about this favorite church on a strong magnetic cross line in that church. And when I closed my eyes there, I could see very clearly the underground magnetic water cascade on the magnetic line going through the church. So literally it was like a periscope. I closed my eyes, strong magnetic line, and I saw the picture of where that magnetic line was coming from quite clearly. So it was obviously a periscope. Well, if you take that to the next step, which is literally inhabiting the array, what song lines are, it would be inhabiting stars, obviously. Now, what has been measured is when, a million children sang the same song, it was measured 11 times. The solar flares went, ah, and they got very calm. That's been measured. So the stars obviously need something DNA makes, and we now know what it is. It's centripetal force, which literally enables star birth. Eventually, when we grow up, we inhabit a much larger array. And interestingly, that star geometries, the dominant geometry of all orbital mechanics is golden ratio, because not only is that the only way to stabilize gravity, but mindfulness among the stars. So, it's no coincidence. Not only has the solar system planet, but the arms of the galaxy, they're all based on golden ratio for a reason. It's not just that's how gravity is made and stabilized in the atmosphere, but it's how consciousness inhabits larger things. So yes, we are destined to grow up and inhabit larger things, but we need to practice locally. And then the advanced shaman absolutely can navigate and steer among the stars and, in fact, teleport that way. But that is a very advanced consciousness. The nine.
Beautiful. Right. It's so beautiful because it's part of our potential. It's
Yes,
part of who we are.
exactly.
And in order for us to really be able to understand it, and it's a process, right? It's like with anything. It's like we were talking about earlier, even focusing your attention and working on all these things. But the first thing you need to have in order to start moving forward is that knowledge base, and really starting to understand that, and then start to incorporate getting out into nature, but not just getting out into nature, understanding why you're getting out into nature, understanding why it's important for these kids to be out in nature, and all these different things. And it's really the knowledge of that, and then it's the incorporating of that knowledge into your lifestyle. And as that all starts to layer out,
Exactly.
everybody starts living healthier, better lives. The consciousness of the planet starts getting better. And, I talk to a lot of people, and even me and Riley, we're students, we're, even after years of listening to all the videos, part of it is just repetition. It's like you're learning life's missions, you're learning life's, secrets. And you don't expect, I mean, in our mentality, we're so impatient. We expect everything to be done in 15 minutes, but there's no reason why you can't go back and listen to these videos 10 times and absorb it. And every time I do, I pick up on things that I might not have picked up on before, and my knowledge base of information gets greater and greater, so that as I'm listening to this, I can assimilate more of what's being said, but you take it on in a way that it's like it's exciting. It's I love it so much. I can't wait to learn more. And slow and steady wins the race. You know, it's Dan, your channel is Dan Winter at Fractal Field.
Yeah, that's wild. YouTube.com/Dan Winter Fractal Field, 3 million views, almost 400 films. You know, we might say in closing also that, you know, as I noticed, the more bliss I had access to, the more my blood became sensitive to magnetic lines. I now can find a magnetic line crosspoint in any field because of my inner voice. And that's the point, that you know, listening to me is fun, and there's lots of teachers, and that's wonderful. But really what's evolving is your access to your own inner guide, your own inner voice, which is literally the growth of your own intuition. But that intuition is dependent upon the astral hygiene that allows your aura to implode symmetrically. And so it starts with a lot of small decisions so that you can make the right big decisions, which is about growing your aura. And then your intuition grows. And then that inner voice is absolutely pristine. That is, may the force be with you.
It's beautiful. I absolutely love it. Riley, anything you'd like to talk about, or anything you'd like to ask Dan any questions about today?
Honestly, I think you guys covered it, but I do have one question about the Therapy.
Go ahead, please.
So when I asked her what I would experience, she was like, well, everyone experiences something different. And then, but when Sean and I came out, we experienced the same, like a similar experience. And then it was the tingling in all of the different areas of our body, which were different areas, but a lot of people shared the same experience with the tingling. So I was wondering, where does that come from?
Well, many levels here. So one thing, you know, a phase conjugate implosive charge field is by definition circulation perfected. That's what it is. That's why charge circulation then serves, for example, helping some part of an extremity that's numb or doesn't have feeling, or some part that's not getting good blood flow. So you're focusing in circulation of charge. In fact, the name for what blood is a device for charge circulation. That's what blood is about. So enhancing circulation then has another level, which is, first of all, the circulation, the first thing that it's going to do is look for wherever circulation is inhibited, just like your cat, who loves you and knows that you're in pain, knows exactly what part of your body to lie next to run its motor. You know,
it really will.
So the plasma field is like that. The plasma field will go to wherever the circulation is inhibited, and that will get, you know, that'll get buzzed. And if you relax and help direct it with your attention, that will sort out the slip knot. And then there's a higher level yet here, which is that as the circulation is enabled, then awareness is enabled. Literally, the brighter the ball of fire of your circulating plasma, the more the awareness can inhabit, quite literally. So as your glowing aura can increase in density, that increased aura density, you know, you can call it going to the next dimension or increased harmonic inclusiveness, but it's simply the more charge implosion there is, the more awareness there is by definition.
Ooh, okay.
And this is our new generation of people here, these young people. And Riley and Dylan, you know, they're young people in their 20s. But the beautiful thing is, because I interact with them and I'm friends, obviously, and we're coworkers, I can see how the knowledge base is circulating out to like the whole circle of around them. And, you know, this is our future here. So, you know, to have people like Riley and Dylan that are so enthusiastic, that love the technology, absolutely makes me so excited. And, you know, this is where it's all going, is this knowledge is coming down to these generations of young people who, you know, between other young people can share it with each other. And it's just so exciting to have, this type of experience with the young people, getting exposure to Therapy, getting exposure to this technology, the knowledge of understanding the soul, which I believe really for these young people is so important. I mean, they are the ones right now that I feel like are,
Yeah.
like we talked before the thing, I didn't sit in a metal room classroom, but these kids now are. And they're exposed to all these fluorescent lights, and they're the ones dealing with all these things. So for them to be able to educate themselves and to have this knowledge, and not to have necessarily me or even yourself, but amongst themselves be able to share it because they're getting the knowledge from you, is incredibly exciting. I mean, it makes me so happy to see these young people so enthused on these calls. And you've
Well,
done
thank
calls
you.
with other people on your,
And
but
yeah, and I would like to say one more thing also. Gratitude for your youth, that we set ourselves the challenge to prove that we can help empower young people with flameandmind.com related brainwave tools, that when you learn to make the alpha to gamma cascade, which is directly how Theraphi is powered, actually. So there's the bliss binaural sound, which is very inexpensive, flame and sound, and flame and mind. If you play the binaural sound, and then if you have access to the brainwave aspect, flameandmind.com, then you learn to make the alpha to gamma cascade inside, which is the driver from Theraphi. And we believe that not only does that train kids to see without their eyes and lucid dreaming and remote viewing, but that is the beginning of this process that you're making inside. Remember, it was Jean Charles, that's literally that alpha to gamma cascade at very high amplitude just before he teleported with witnesses. So this is super powerful to empower young people to learn to make that alpha to gamma cascade. And it's not that flame and mind is the only way to train for that. No, there's lots of ways to learn alpha, and many of them are good. But the point is, when you make that inner muscle to make that frequency cascade, remember that alpha is the heartbeat of the earth. So you're embedding in Gaia's caduceus directly. So it's obvious why the alpha to gamma cascade it's the key in the lock. So there's a lot of self-empowerment. So if you get a chance later to play with some of the brainwave toys, we've just improved the software now. You can actually, learn, when did I just make my alpha? And then you learn to begin that cascade, and you feel that pressure, that presence.
she is in Plasma Fire almost every day. She has the app. And we'll upgrade because I don't know if we've got the newest one, but the Flame and Sound, we've got it. We have Flame and Mind too, Flame and Mind, Flame and Sound, but we have Plasma Fire here, and she absolutely loves it. And I told you on one of our last calls that if I can't find Riley, and I go down the hallway and I see that door shut, I know where Riley is, and I'm not opening the door. I'm just going to let her sit in her little world of bliss in there. But
well, good. That's
she
perfect.
absolutely loves it.
And then just in the latest, only about a week ago, upgrade to Flame and Mind, Flame and Sound, there's a third cascade called Schumann, which takes that modulation from the 7.29 to 7.83 per in the cascade. So it's now a perfected Schumann cascade, and amazing how bioactive it is. That will be driving also our new piezofire.com. So there's a lot of new things coming out, but try the new Schumann cascade as you drive Plasma Fire, and also for your own bliss bio.
Awesome.
Fun stuff. Cool.
There you go, Riley. Make sure and grab my iPhone and update mine too, please.
It's for the upgrade. Oh, there it is, right there. Cool. Cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, we love it. So, Dan, before, and Dylan, thank you so much for joining our call today. Dylan's one of our newest members, and he's been able to, and the beautiful thing is Riley's teaching Dylan, like these two, she's explaining to him these things. They're good friends outside the office, but she's literally, like I'm watching her, talk to all these other young people. And I just find it just makes me so happy.
Wonderful.
It really is. And Dan, and I know from your videos and getting to know you that this knowledge and imparting this knowledge onto these young people and sharing this and explaining what is the soul and why that's so important, and so many things that you're doing, your life's mission, your life's work, being able to share that with you in real time and show you, real, people that are the target, audience that we're trying to get this information to is really exciting.
Exactly.
So, I've said it many times. but I'm so grateful for everything you do. I'm so grateful for all the technology that you and Paul and Patrick and everybody that's, worked with you are putting out. And I'm really like a little kid. I'm in my 50s, but I feel like I'm 15 years old, and tomorrow's Christmas, and I've got the tree downstairs, and every day I get to go run down there. So, I don't really know what else to say other than thank you. But is there
Thank you.
anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
Oh, it's all done with mirrors. Your pure intention enables mine. It's all good. We're becoming a shareable wave together. Thank you.
I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for everything you do. Dan, stay with me. I'm going to end the call, but I'll stay with you here for just a minute once we get done.
Okay. All right. I'll just end the recording. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
How did you feel it?
Could feel it like tingling going through my body.
That's what I felt.
So we're here at the Ultra Wellness Center in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. We just talked to Lachelle. Riley is checking out. She's in the Theraphi right now, which is the Plasma Med Bed system. And the facility is amazing. If you notice, ambient light everywhere, no fluorescent lights, beautiful crystals, beautiful ambiance. The whole place is amazing. And me and Riley have been so blessed to be in the presence of Lachelle and this amazing facility. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking more about the Plasma Med Bed system shortly.